Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today we are going to be using the Lovely Layers Butterflies. Yes, I know I've used this in every card since the release came out. Sorry, not sorry. As well as the Lovely Layers Bugs. And then this chinoiserie 3D embossing folder is kind of the star of the show today. And then for my sentiment, I went with the So Special stamps and dies. So I'm going to be using a couple of those. So we're going to be doing the blackout technique two ways. And the first way that we need to do it is by doing the embossing first. So I just have a white A2 card panel and I am going to go ahead and emboss that. Now you will need to follow the directions for whatever machine that you have. I have a Spellbinders Platinum 6, and so it shows me right on my A plate that I need the A plate, my folder, and my paper, and then the D adapter plate. And I run mine through once, and then I kind of run it back through the second time just to make sure that I'm having a good impression. If you find that your paper is cracking, spritz it with water first. And then here we have this beautiful detail, and for this technique, we are going to turn it upside down. So we are going to actually be using the debossed side. And then the other one, we're going to do our ink blending first, and then we will do our embossing with the folder. So for the one that we already have the pattern on, we can go in with these smaller blender brushes. Honeybee has detailed blending brushes. And then in the detailed pack, like the 3-pack, there are some smaller ones, which are mainly what I use. I do use, I think, one of the B-Lux detailed blending brushes. And then for the one that we're just doing the inking on, I'm just picking kind of a rainbow of colors and putting them down in an order that's going to work really nicely. So I decided I wanted to go more on the purple side. So in order, because sometimes when you're going in rainbow order, you get to the last color and there's not a lot of real estate left. So I did want to kind of switch it up and throw the purple in there first. Something else I just wanted to say, I am using the Lovely Layers Butterflies and the bugs. The scale is a little bit different. So the bee definitely looks larger than my butterflies, but that's okay because butterflies come in all sizes. But if you just had the bugs, you could also do this card. Like, basically, in order to have something to accent them, you could use flowers. I just happen to be using butterflies and bees. So here I'm just going through and I am going to speed this up, but everything is pretty much basically the same. We are picking the areas because we already have the pattern down on the debossed side. So it makes it really, really easy to know where to add our ink to. The other one is just kind of more of a moving rainbow. That's, we just want to make sure the colors are all working really nicely together. So obviously you can already tell that we're going to have two different looks because one, like the leaves are going to be green where they're supposed to be green. The other one, it's going to be, the flower, maybe bluish green, and then that's gonna, spread into maybe a purple to a pink. So it's gonna definitely be two different looks, but we still get that rainbow look. One just gives you just a little bit more control. So I have done both of these techniques in the past. I will say that my favorite kind of embossing folders to do them on are ones that are like florals, because I think that they look the prettiest. But you could do this with any 3D embossing folder, whatever you have. What is the other one that we have? Sandy's Garden, I think is what it's called. And that one's a stunning floral that you could do this with. And then also, I think I did it with the Spring Medley. So, just whatever you have that you kind of want to experiment with, this will work for whatever 3D embossing folders you have. Now, I do like my colors. I know I'm sure you're thinking to yourself, Kelly, they couldn't possibly be more vibrant. But I do like some bright colors, and I like the drama that the blackout technique brings. So I do kind of go in and do them twice because the debossed area, we don't really care where else the ink is going, because once we do the blackout technique, the only part we're going to see is the debossed portion. So that one definitely is a little bit quicker because you can just, knock out the coloring. But I am going to go back in on the left-hand side, the one that's just the full background, and do another layer of color just so everything's blending really nicely and it's very vibrant. I ended up with a blue center, and that blue was sitting kind of right next to that orange. So in order to fix that, I'm going to go back in with my pink, and I'm going to bring the pink right down across where their orange and blue is meeting. So that way it's going to create like kind of a coral and a purple, to get rid of that like kind of brownish color that we had going on. So once we're done with these, I am going to set them aside and work on the other elements of the card. You can tell right now they don't look like much, but like hang tight because they will. They will, I promise. So here we're die cutting our bee. All of his body parts out of white, except for his wings. I'm die cutting those out of vellum. And then the butterflies also out of white as well. I chose to go with 2 of the smaller butterflies, and I die cut all of these twice. Then for my sentiments, I chose the "May your day be filled with the love you give us." And then this one is actually 2 separate sentiments, and it says "Thank you for everything you do." And then also I did "You're the best," and kind of combine them into one sentiment. Treated my black paper with my anti-static tool, stamped this down in our brilliant white pigment ink, and I do like to stamp mine twice, so I went ahead and did that. And then I will be using some white detail embossing powder to get these all nice and heat set. So while I am doing this voiceover, today has been a day, and the day has not gone at all how I anticipated the day would go. And that just, I think makes sense. It does happen to us. So currently we've had weather, like we have had thunderstorms all day long. And then it'll kind of like break and it'll be blue skies and sunshine for maybe like a half an hour. And then we're back to the thunderstorms. Okay, let's go back to the card here. So here, in order to get a little bit of color onto my vellum, I'm going to pick a brighter blue than I want because I know it's going to be really desaturated. And then I'm going to flip the vellum over so I'm actually coloring on the back so that it's a little bit more muted. And then that way it's going to look as if the colors have just like a little bit of a blue sheen, which I love. And then the moisture also kind of curls the vellum a bit. So it gives them a lot of really nice texture. Then for the bees, they have 2 layers, kind of like the body of the bee, and then kind of like the head portion. And in between that head and the body is where you would adhere the wings. So first things first, you kind of have to decide what stripes you want to be yellow and what stripes you want to be black. You always want to do the yellow first because it is a lighter color. It will pick up that black and drag it. So as you can see here, I am trying to make this marker work and it ain't happening, folks. It's because she needs to be refilled. So I did leave this in because I know not everybody knows knows how to do them. This is a new refill. The older ones are much bigger, but this new one kind of has this needle nose point on it. And so I remove the chisel nib with my tweezers, and then I just leave like my self-locking tweezers from Honeybee, and then I just let them sit over to the side. I drip in as much ink as I need. And you can usually tell by watching the tip, like you can start to see that the ink comes down and is saturated. And then I replace the chisel nib once I have enough ink in there with the tweezers and push it down. It helps quite a bit to keep my fingers clean. But then you do have to make sure that you have enough ink working its way down. I was a little impatient as I was in the middle of coloring this image when I was doing it. But eventually it did get down there, and you can see the whole tip is saturated. So since the colors, like the saturation of the paper is what helps the colors blend, I did have to go back in with that Y08 so that I could get the YR24 and the E99 to blend together to make my golden yellow. So then for the body, I'm doing the black, and there is black in there, you know, the 100. But then I am kind of leaving some lighter areas with a C9 and a C7. You can go all the way out to a C5 if you would like, but the C7 was good enough for me. And then here is where I'm just going to follow the embossed lines on the body of the bee to fill that in. And it's okay if you go a little bit out of the lines. Like, nobody's going to be like, oh my goodness, she went out of the lines. Look at it. It's so obvious. It's not going to be that obvious. So just do your best to follow the embossed lines, and your bee will really start to come together. I'm adding my darkest shading on the outside of the body, and then bringing in the light, bringing it into the lightest part in the center. And this is going to help give it a more rounded appearance, which will make it look more dimensional. So here's our bee with just the coloring. And then when you put the wings in, you can see that it really gives it like a ton of depth and dimension. I love these little bees. I think they're totally adorable. So that's the bee. Now, I do want to make sure that I tell you, just in case you are working on a non-porous surface like I am, I just use regular isopropyl alcohol to clean up my little markings there, because if you don't clean them up off your fingers and off your glass mat, you will pick them up with the next color marker. And like in this case, I wouldn't want to pick up black and smear it into my blue butterfly. It would not be pretty. So here's all the color combinations I am using. I'm doing the two smaller butterflies, both blue, keeping the darkest shading kind of along the center, and then gradually getting lighter as I go out. And then the same thing for the pink and the orange butterflies. That is the same butterfly. So anyway, I was telling you, we've been having weather all day long. And so it's kind of like come in these waves. And currently, as I am doing this voiceover, we actually have a tornado warning. So it was like all blue skies and sunshine, and Peanut was out playing with his friends, and I was sitting at the kitchen table editing a video, this video, and, getting ready to, when I'm done with this, I'm going to go over and see my mom. And like, we're sitting there, and Eric's like, is that the tornado siren? And I was like, yeah, it sure does sound like it. So then we pull up the weather, because like there's no, you know what I mean? It's blue skies and sunshine. So like, what's happening? And they test them on the first Saturday of the month. So it's definitely not a test. And I know that because I worked at that police station. But anyway, so originally it was till 7:30, but now we're past 7:30 and they've extended it. So we've been kind of like watching the radar. So I'm like just about to call Peanut back in when I hear the tornado sirens when he comes back into the house. And I was like, were those the tornado sirens? And he was like, yeah, they were. And I was like, did you get all your stuff in, like his bike and scooter and stuff? And he was like, yeah, I did. And I'm like, okay, like, good. I went outside, shut the garage door or whatever. And he was like, none of my friends knew what it was. Like, they were all like, where are you going? Because I was like, bye, I'm going home. Like, I'm peace out. He was like, none of them knew. None of them knew what the tornado sirens were. So hopefully, we're in Ohio, and hopefully it's not going to be, an actual tornado. But we shall wait and see, or at least hopefully I'm able to get through this video, right? So anyway, now that everything is done being colored, I am going to go ahead and adhere them together using our honeybee glue. Like I said, these the pink and the orange butterfly are the same one, and then the blues are the same and the bees are the same. So I grew up, like, I'm sure there are some people who are probably, my husband being one of them, and my ex-husband, honestly, who, like, never take the tornado siren seriously. They're like, yeah, it's fine. Like, I'm not going to get up in the middle of the night and go down into the basement or whatever. But I grew up with a grandmother who lived in Oklahoma and Mississippi. So you better bet that anytime there was a tornado warning, or, I mean, honestly, a gray cloud in the sky, we were in the basement. Like, she was not taking any risks whatsoever. She was ushering us right down into the basement to hang out. And that was really before the days of, the internet or anything like that. So you were just down there in candlelight, trying to read a book, looking at each other's eyeballs. Like, there wasn't even anything to do. Oh, anyway. So now that they're all put together, I am adding some white accents with my white gel pen. And then you guys know that I cannot stop myself because I love all the shimmer. I love all the shine. So I am going to be making these shimmery and shiny. If you don't have perfect pearls, you absolutely could use a clear glitter pen. That would work great. This is just slightly more iridescent. I do have like a turquoise I could have used on the blue butterfly or on the wings of the bee or the gumball I have for the pink. But the perfect pearls and the color perfect pearl, it works for all of them. So I just did those. I did wait till my white gel pen was dry, and then I kind of pounced it on there, and you can see how pretty that little sheen is there. And then just to fix that, I just spray some water like out of my mister in the air and then waft them through. Now, here is we're done with the opener now, and here is taking main stage. So for the one that we have not embossed yet, you want to find the flat side of your embossing folder. I'm using a Tim Holtz brayer here. I also have a Speedball brayer. Either one will work. I find that a black pigment ink works best, and my go-to is Altenews Obsidian. But you can try it with whatever you have. You don't have to do black. You could do another darker color. You could try it with black soot, though I do find that to be more gray when it dries. But anyway, we're basically going to apply this all over the flat side. And then you can, switch up directions or whatever so you can get the best coverage. And then once you lay it down, don't move it. Flip it over, tape it shut so that it doesn't move, and you can already start to see kind of what we're going to get, and then run it through your embossing machine just like you normally would, and you can see that there are some gaps. You could run it through maybe a different way to see if you could get, maybe run it through, like take it out and run it through again to see if you could get different pressure. But I just fix it a different way. And then I did clean this up with my, just a wet rag. You could also use stamp cleaner, or I just used a little bit of alcohol. And that way for the next time I want to use that embossing folder, it's nice and clean. For the one that we have already colored and it is debossed, we're just going to go right over the top of it with our brayer and our black pigment ink. And this obviously, as you can see, automatically makes these colors just sing. And you can go over this as many times as you would like. Just know that like the more you go over it and the more different directions that you do, the more black you are going to deposit, not just on the background, but also on kind of the raised areas. If you have any areas that are not covered, which I'm telling you, you will, you can go in. I'm using a black Copic marker. You can use a Sharpie. You could use, if you have Olos or Ohuhus or whatever you got, just as long as it's an alcohol marker. And you're just going to go in and fill in the black. Now, some people find this very tedious. And then in this case, I would recommend that you do the debossing version. That one gives you the best coverage the quickest. The one with the embossing version, I find I treat it like an old coloring book, like when I was a kid. So I kind of outline the whole thing and then I go back in and kind of fill in the middle. And I find this to be very therapeutic, honestly. It does not bother me to take the time to do it. It helps me to, create and just kind of be a little bit lost in thought. So this one typically does take more of that kind of fill in time. Just because we have, different pressures and things like that, where maybe we're not making the most contact with the paper. As you can see, most of them are like closest to the areas that it's being pushed up from. So, I just go through, I outline that little section and then I fill it in. So this is both of them. The one that is debossed is on the right hand side. The one that is embossed is on the left hand side. And they are obviously mirror images of each other because one is the same as the other one. It's just flipped over. Please forgive me for the autofocus on my camera. I am fighting with it. I don't know why it doesn't like me, but we are fighting. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I need to do for it to work correctly all of the time. I'm thinking maybe it doesn't like my white glass mat. I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, I did adhere my sentiments down flat. And then for my little accent characters, for the butterflies, I did a combination of the foam tape on the wings and the liquid glue on the body so that just the wings are raised. For the bee, because our scale is that the bee is bigger, I popped the bee all the way up on the foam tape. And then for the blue butterfly, I just did, like I said, just the outer wings and used glue on the middle. So in case you were very concerned about my tornado warning, I did just get a little telephone call. I had to take a break from my voiceover. I'll be so lucky if I get this up by 8. Honestly, because they have downgraded us from the tornado warning to now a severe thunderstorm warning, and they've extended it like a full another hour. So we'll see what we end up with. Hopefully, I'm glad that it kind of it reverted back to the severe thunderstorm. Not that those also can't be dangerous, but obviously a tornado is a different animal. So now I did them both the same. I adhered them both, like they're different areas, but I adhered them both the same way. Then I decided that I wanted to mat them on black. And it is challenging to cut any embossed paper with a slide trimmer. And so strictly for this purpose, honestly, I bought a guillotine trimmer, and it does work really, really well for trimming those, the papers that we've already embossed. So one of them has, like an 1/8 of an inch black border, and the other one has, like a 1/16. I just feel like it finishes the card off nicely. I do prefer like a more framed in kind of look. But you absolutely could leave them, just the way that they were and not frame them in. So once I have them adhered, I am going to add some rainbow rhinestones. I cannot get enough of these, especially when my card is a rainbow in the background. They just fit so nicely. So these are the rainbow rhinestones from Honeybee. And I'm just accenting our little sentiments with that. And then that is going to finish off our cards. I love the way that they came out. I hope that you're inspired to try the blackout technique. Tell me which one you prefer, the debossed or the embossed. I'd love to know. Thank you guys again for spending your time with me. I always appreciate it. And I will catch you on the next video. Bye.